All right, so today we're gonna dive into something that's probably on everyone's minds at some point or another. What is consciousness?
Ah, yeah.
Like, we all kind of experience it every day, the thinking, the feeling, the whole shebang.
Right.
But what's really behind it all, you know?
Exactly.
So for this deep dive, we're going to be exploring some insights from scientists and philosophers featured on the podcast, KMM by M podcast, Real Talk and Laugh.
Oh, cool.
Get ready, though, because some of these ideas might just turn your world upside down.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating question, isn't it?
It is.
Trying to understand something so fundamental to our being.
Yeah.
It's like trying to grab smoke.
Yeah.
You know, we're using consciousness to investigate consciousness.
Yeah, so are we like already kind of knee-deep in the mystery just by asking the question?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
And it's not just about, mapping out what our brains do.
Right.
The real puzzle is the feeling of awareness, that subjective experience.
Yeah.
Why does it feel like something to be us?
Right, like, I mean, we can see neurons firing and doing their thing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really fully explain why we experience the world in this rich, subjective way.
Right.
That's what philosopher David Chalmers called the hard problem of consciousness, right?
He nailed it, yeah.
Okay.
He pointed out this gap between seeing the physical brain in action and explaining the kind of first-person experience of consciousness.
Right.
It's like the difference between reading a recipe
Yeah.
and actually tasting the dish.
Okay, so this hard problem is basically saying there's a piece missing in our understanding.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay.
Imagine scientists studying a bat's brain,
Okay.
trying to understand echolocation.
Okay.
They can map the neural pathways,
Right.
but they'll never truly know what it feels like for the bat to see with sound.
Right.
That subjective experience is what makes consciousness so slippery.
So even if we know how the brain processes information,
Yeah.
the why does it feel like something remains a mystery?
Absolutely. And that leads us to a crossroads.
Yeah.
Is consciousness purely a product of the brain, or is there something more at play?
Ooh, that's where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah.
So what are some of the leading theories out there?
Well, let's begin with the physicalist perspective.
Okay.
This view suggests that consciousness is essentially a byproduct of brain activity. Think of it like your car's engine.
Okay.
The engine running is like the brain, and the consciousness is the hum the engine makes.
Okay, so the brain is the machine, and consciousness is just the sound of it working.
Right.
But if it's that straightforward, why is it so hard to connect those neurons firing to the actual feeling of being aware?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And even proponents of physicalism wrestle with it.
Yeah.
One of the most famous voices in this camp was Francis Crick,
Okay.
a Nobel laureate who helped discover DNA structure.
Wow.
He argued that everything about us, from our thoughts to our emotions,
Yeah.
ultimately comes down to the activity of our nerve cells.
So we're just a bunch of cells talking to each other.
Well, Crick put it even more bluntly.
Okay.
In his book, The Astonishing Hypothesis, he wrote, your joys and your sorrows, your memories and your ambitions, your sense of personal identity and free will are in fact no more than the behavior of a vast assembly of nerve cells and their associated molecules.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
Does that explanation feel complete, or does it seem like something's missing?
That's for each of us to ponder, I think.
Yeah.
Does the idea that we're just our brains, does that sit right?
Yeah.
Or do you feel like there's something more to the story?
I mean, for me, there's this kind of nagging feeling like there's more to it than just neurons firing.
Yeah.
Like, how do you explain that feeling of me, the unique individual looking out at the world?
Yeah, you've hit on a key point.
Okay.
That feeling of meaniness is at the heart of the hard problem.
Right.
And it's why some thinkers propose that consciousness isn't produced by the brain, but rather it's a fundamental property of the universe itself.
Wait, so you're saying consciousness could be, like, everywhere?
It's a possibility worth considering.
Okay.
Physicist David Bohm, for example,
Okay.
suggested that reality has an underlying implicate order. In this order, everything is interconnected.
Okay.
And consciousness is interwoven into this fabric. So it's not just inside our heads, it's baked into the very nature of existence.
Okay, so now we're talking about something much bigger than just our brains.
Right.
But how does that explain our unique experiences, our personal sense of self?
That's where things get even more intriguing.
Okay.
Neuroscientist Anil Seth, who studies perception,
Okay.
offers a compelling idea.
Okay.
He suggests our brains create a controlled hallucination of reality.
Hold on, a hallucination. So
Yeah.
you're saying the world isn't real?
Not quite.
Okay.
It's more like saying our brains actively construct our experience
Okay.
rather than just passively recording it.
Hmm.
Steth argues that consciousness may not be limited to just the brain's functions. It's an active interplay between our minds and the world around us.
So consciousness is like a dance between our inner world and the outside world.
Yeah, a beautiful way to put it.
Okay.
And this opens up the idea that consciousness might be more fundamental than we realize,
Okay.
even if it expresses itself uniquely through our individual brains.
This is already blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Are there any other theories that push the boundaries even further?
Get ready,
Okay.
because we're heading into some truly mind-bending territory.
All right, let's do it.
Panpsychism.
What is them?
Panpsychism.
I definitely need you to break that one down.
Okay, so panpsychism proposes that consciousness is a fundamental property of everything in the universe.
Everything.
Not just humans or animals,
Okay.
but rocks, trees,
Yeah.
even atoms has some level of consciousness,
Okay.
though much simpler than our own.
Wait a minute. Are you saying my coffee mug is conscious?
It might sound wild,
It kind of does.
but philosopher Philip Goff makes a strong argument for panpsychism. In his book, Galileo's Error, he suggests it elegantly solves that hard problem we were discussing earlier.
How so?
If consciousness is a fundamental ingredient of reality,
Okay.
it doesn't need to suddenly appear from non-conscious stuff.
Right.
It's always been there, just expressed differently at different levels of complexity.
Okay.
Think of it like a spectrum of awareness, from a rock's simple existence
Okay.
to the richness of human thought.
Okay, so it's not that my coffee mug is pondering the meaning of life,
Right.
but it has some basic level of consciousness, just like everything else.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this basic consciousness, when organized in incredibly complex ways,
Yeah.
could give rise to the kind of subjective experience we have as humans.
So panpsychism is saying consciousness is kind of like a universal spice sprinkled differently throughout everything.
I like that analogy.
I just came up with that.
It captures the essence of the idea.
Okay, good.
And this leads us to another fascinating theory that attempts to bridge the physical and the experiential, quantum consciousness.
Quantum consciousness, now we're venturing into the realm of science fiction.
It may sound futuristic,
Yeah.
but some legitimate scientific theories
Okay.
are exploring how consciousness might be connected to the strange world of quantum mechanics.
All right, take me down this quantum rabbit hole. How do tiny particles relate to our conscious experience?
One prominent theory called orchestrated objective reduction, or ORC,
Work.
was developed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff.
Interesting combo.
They propose that consciousness arises from quantum processes happening inside microtubules,
Okay.
tiny structures within our brain cells.
Okay, slow down a second. What are microtubules and how do they connect to quantum mechanics?
So microtubules provide structural support within our cells.
Okay.
Penrose and Hameroff believe these microtubules are just the right size and structure to host quantum events.
And quantum events are?
These events occur at the subatomic level,
Okay.
where things behave in ways that defy our everyday understanding of physics. For example, there's superposition,
Okay.
where a particle can exist in multiple states at once,
Right.
and entanglement,
Well, okay.
where two particles become linked and can influence each other instantly no matter how far apart they are.
Right, that's where my brain starts to fry a little.
Yeah.
So are they saying that our consciousness is basically a bunch of entangled particles doing their quantum dance inside our brains?
That's the gist of it.
Okay.
They argue that standard biology can't fully explain the complexity and subjective nature of consciousness. So they're looking to the strangeness of quantum mechanics for answers.
Right.
The weirdness of the quantum world, they believe, might hold the key to the weirdness of our inner experience.
Even if the quantum details are a bit much,
Yeah.
the takeaway is that consciousness could be linked to some really strange stuff happening at the subatomic level.
Precisely.
Okay.
It suggests that understanding consciousness might require us to completely rethink our assumptions about reality itself.
Wow, this conversation is taking us to some pretty deep places.
It is.
We've gone from neurons to controlled hallucinations to quantum mechanics.
We have.
It's amazing how many different ways there are to approach this question.
It speaks to the complexity and depth of this mystery.
Yeah.
And we've only just begun to scratch the surface.
Before we go any further, are there any other perspectives we should consider?
Absolutely. We've explored some Western scientific and philosophical viewpoints.
Right.
But to get a truly well-rounded understanding, we need to venture into the realm of Eastern philosophy.
Okay, I'm all for broadening our horizons. What do Eastern traditions have to say about consciousness?
So Eastern philosophies, such as Hinduism and Buddhism,
Okay.
offer a very different lens through which to view consciousness. They often see it not just as a product of the brain,
Right.
but as a fundamental aspect of reality itself, often intertwined with spirituality.
So we're moving beyond the purely scientific and into a more spiritual or metaphysical understanding.
That's right.
Yeah.
For example, in Hinduism,
Okay.
the concept of Atman refers to the eternal self or soul,
Okay.
which is considered a part of Brahman,
Okay.
the universal consciousness.
So it's like our individual consciousness is a drop in the ocean of universal consciousness.
That's a beautiful analogy,
Okay.
and it highlights a key difference between Eastern and Western perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Western thought often focuses on the individual self,
Right.
while Eastern traditions emphasize the interconnectedness of all things.
That makes sense. So how does Buddhism view consciousness?
Buddhism doesn't necessarily see consciousness as eternal or unchanging. Instead, it emphasizes the impermanent and ever-changing nature of our experience.
Go.
Thich Nhat Hanh, a renowned Buddhist monk,
Okay.
described consciousness as a constantly flowing stream,
Okay.
present in every moment, but never the same from one moment to the next.
So consciousness is like a river constantly moving and evolving.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this view encourages us to be present with our experience, to recognize the fluidity and interconnectedness of all things, including our own consciousness.
This is so fascinating.
It is.
Eastern philosophies seem to offer a more holistic and experiential understanding of consciousness.
Yeah.
One that goes beyond simply trying to pin it down scientifically.
Precisely. And by considering these diverse perspectives, we can start to appreciate the complexity and mystery of consciousness in a much richer way.
I'm feeling like we've just dipped our toes into this topic. Is there anything else we should explore before we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
There's one more area that's especially relevant today.
Okay.
The intersection of consciousness and artificial intelligence.
AI and consciousness, that sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie.
It might sound futuristic,
Yeah.
but researchers are actively exploring whether advanced AI could one day become conscious.
But how would we even know if a machine was conscious?
Right.
Wouldn't it just be really good at pretending to be conscious?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it brings us right back to the hard problem we discussed earlier.
Right.
Even if AI can perfectly mimic human behavior and intelligence,
Okay.
does that mean it's genuinely experiencing anything? Or is it just a sophisticated algorithm running a program?
So there's a potential consciousness gap between AI and human experience.
Yeah.
Like even if AI acts intelligent, it might not truly feel or experience the world the way we do.
That's the crux of the debate.
Yeah.
And it raises some profound questions about the nature of consciousness and what it means to be human.
Right.
Perhaps that's a good place to pause and reflect on everything we've covered so far.
Yeah. I think my brain could use a break to process all of this. We've gone from the inner workings of our brains to the vastness of the cosmos.
We have.
It's a lot.
We explored a range of perspectives from the concrete to the abstract.
Right.
And it's clear that consciousness is a multifaceted phenomenon
Yeah.
that continues to fascinate and challenge us.
I'm definitely feeling challenged, but in a good way.
Good.
This has been an incredible journey so far, and I can't wait to see where we go next.
Me too.
All right, well, stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into consciousness.
See you then. Welcome back to our deep dive into consciousness.
Oh my gosh, my head is still spinning from all those mind-blowing theories.
Yeah.
It feels like we've only just begun to explore this incredible topic.
We have, and that's what makes it so fascinating. Consciousness is a mystery that keeps unfolding.
Right.
The more we delve into it to continue our journey,
Yeah.
I'd like to revisit an idea we touched upon earlier,
Right.
the concept of consciousness as a spectrum,
Okay.
rather than an all-or-nothing phenomena.
Right, like the coffee mug example with panpsychism.
Exactly.
It's not that my mug is having deep philosophical debates, but maybe it possesses some very basic level of awareness.
Exactly. This spectrum idea helps bridge the gap between seemingly different viewpoints.
Okay.
For instance, the physicalist view,
Okay.
with its focus on brain activity, might describe one end of the spectrum. The highly complex consciousness we experience as humans.
So the more complex the system,
Oh,
the more
yeah.
complex the consciousness.
That's one way to think about it.
Okay.
And then theories like panpsychism extend this spectrum to include even seemingly inanimate objects,
Right.
suggesting everything has some degree of consciousness. however rudimentary.
So it's not a question of conscious or not conscious, but rather how much consciousness.
Precisely, this allows for the possibility that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, woven into the very fabric of reality itself.
That's a pretty amazing concept, but how does this spectrum idea help us understand our own consciousness?
Yeah,
The human experience of being aware.
that's where things get really interesting if consciousness is a spectrum.
Okay.
Perhaps what we experience as human consciousness is just one point along that spectrum.
Okay.
A highly developed and complex form, for sure.
Yeah.
It's still part of a larger continuum.
So we're not separate from the universe, but rather a part of this grand symphony of consciousness.
Beautifully put, this perspective has implications for how we see ourselves in our place in the cosmos. It challenges the idea that we're isolated individuals and suggests a deeper interconnectedness with everything around us.
I'm starting to see how these different theories, even the ones that seem far out, can actually work together to paint a more complete picture.
Exactly. It's like assembling a puzzle. Each theory might represent a different piece, and by putting them together,
Yeah.
we start to see the bigger picture emerge.
So where do we go from here? What other pieces of the puzzle should we consider?
Well, it's important to remember that the scientific study of consciousness is still relatively young.
Okay.
We're only beginning to develop the tools and methods to explore these questions in a truly rigorous way.
Right. And we've already encountered so many different approaches, from neuroscience to quantum physics to Eastern philosophy.
Yeah.
It seems like there's no single right answer.
That's right. And perhaps that's the point.
Okay.
Maybe the nature of consciousness is such that it can't be fully captured by any one discipline or perspective.
So we need a more holistic, interdisciplinary approach.
Precisely. We need to draw from a variety of fields: science, philosophy, spirituality, even art,
Wow.
to truly grapple with the mystery of consciousness.
That sounds like a call for collaboration and open-mindedness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I believe that through this kind of open and collaborative exploration, we can make significant progress in understanding this fundamental aspect of our existence.
I'm excited to see what the future holds for consciousness studies. But before we get too caught up in the future, let's bring it back to the present.
Okay.
What can we as individuals do to explore our own consciousness? Are there any practical takeaways from all of this?
That's a great question. I think the most important takeaway is to cultivate a sense of curiosity and wonder about our own inner experience, to pay attention to our thoughts, feelings, and sensations, and to ask ourselves questions about the nature of our awareness.
So it's about becoming more mindful and introspective.
Exactly. There are many practices that can support this kind of inner exploration.
Right.
Meditation, for example, is a powerful tool for cultivating awareness and understanding the nature of our minds.
Right. And even something as simple as taking a walk in nature can help us connect with the present moment and appreciate the richness of our sensory experience.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about being open to the mystery of consciousness, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
I love that it's like we're all on this grand adventure of consciousness, both individually and collectively.
Precisely. And by embracing the mystery and engaging with it wholeheartedly, we can continue to deepen our understanding and appreciation of this remarkable phenomenon.
This has been such an enriching conversation. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on consciousness. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Sure.
Any final thoughts or insights for this part of our journey?
Welcome back to our deep dive into consciousness. We've covered a lot of ground, from the physical mechanics of the brain, the mind-bending realms of quantum physics, and Eastern philosophy. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. And I have to say, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all the possibilities. There's so much to think about.
Right?
So many different angles to consider.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. Consciousness isn't a simple equation to solve.
Right.
It's a mystery that unfolds and deepens the more we explore it.
So where do we go from here? After all this exploration, what are we left with?
I think we're left with a sense of awe and wonder. Consciousness is a gift, this remarkable phenomenon that allows us to experience the world, connect with others, and ponder the mysteries of existence.
It's true, even with all the scientific advancements and philosophical insights. There's still a deep sense of mystery around consciousness.
And that's okay. Embracing the mystery is part of the journey.
Right.
It's what keeps us curious, what drives us to keep searching and learning.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What can they do to further their own understanding of consciousness?
I encourage everyone to continue exploring. Read books, listen to podcasts, have those thought-provoking conversations. But most importantly, pay attention to your own experience.
Be present. Be mindful.
Exactly. Notice your thoughts, feelings, and sensations.
Right.
Ask yourself questions. What does it feel like to be you? What does it mean to be conscious?
Yeah.
These inquiries can lead to profound insights.
It's like we're all on a personal quest to understand our own inner worlds.
We are. And the more we explore, the more we realize how interconnected we all are.
Right.
Not just with each other, but with the entire universe.
That's a beautiful thought. Before we wrap up this incredible deep dive, is there any final message you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yes. Philosopher Alan Watts once said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself."
Oh, that's beautiful. It speaks to the interconnectedness we've been discussing.
It does, and it reminds us that consciousness isn't just something we possess,
Right.
but something we participate in, a vast interconnected web of awareness that extends far beyond our individual selves.
I love that it's both humbling and empowering.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I think the message is clear.
Yeah.
The journey of understanding consciousness is ongoing.
Absolutely.
There's no final destination, no single answer that will satisfy all our questions.
Precisely, but that's the beauty of it. The exploration itself is the reward. The more we learn, the more we realize how much more there is to discover.
Consciousness is a mystery that unfolds with every breath we take, every thought we have, every experience we encounter, and by continuing to explore, we deepen our understanding of ourselves, the world around us, and the very nature of existence. So keep that sense of curiosity alive.
Absolutely. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep embracing the mysteries of the universe.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into consciousness. We hope you've enjoyed the journey.
And we look forward to diving into more fascinating topics with you in the future. Until then, keep those minds open and keep exploring a number.